Now, this right here is one of the cheapest RX 5700 XT that we bought off AliExpress for about 219 New Zealand dollars. I'll put the conversion right here. Let's see how this thing goes. But first, hit that like button and let's go unbox this thing.
Bruh.
Design for the SOYO RX 5700 XT is a mixed bag. On one hand, you have a fantasy theme facade with those wavy fan designs, and on the other hand, you have a very minimalistic backplate. Like literally, it's just a metal backplate. This card looks new, it's not refurbished. The cooler looks thick with some of those exposed heat pipes. It feels really basic. I mean, the build quality is okay, but hey, this is a $115 card, so we'll just set our expectations right there. Now, this card requires an 8+6 pin power connector. It has one HDMI and 3 display ports. Now, if you look at the SOYO RX 5700 XT specs, it follows the AMD's stock specification for the RX 5700 XT. We've got clock speeds at 1755 MHz and boost frequency at 1905 MHz. Nothing really unusual here. No factory overclock, just a plain RX 5700 XT. Let's see how this one performs on a real-world gaming scenario. We'll be testing the SOYO RX 5700 XT in different settings. We'll be playing Warzone set in the Mazra map, which we know is both CPU and GPU intensive. I mean, just disregard the FPS numbers for now. I'd like you guys to focus on the GPU clock, temperatures, and the GPU power to fully understand how this card performs and if it's actually good value for you. Now, we'll do a dedicated video on its raw performance on our competitive game, so if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Okay, let's start with stock settings. Okay, first thing that you've noticed is that we do have a really higher temperature in here. I mean, look at that one. We are ranging between 73 going all the way to 77 degrees Celsius, which is usually the later part of the game, and that's hot. Right? Our GPU clock is around 1820 to 1870 plus megahertz, mostly at 1850 megahertz on our stock settings. GPU power is at 150 watts, and our fan speed is around 1550 RPM, and sometimes it ramps up all the way to 1700 plus and the later part of the map, and you can see it here. Now let's look at our hardware info numbers, and our maximum recording GPU temperature is at 78 degrees. Our maximum junction temperature is 92. GPU clock is at 1876 MHz. GPU power obviously at 150 watts, and our fan speeds do reach all the way up to 2668 RPM, which we have not seen in game, and I think this is just when we are in the loading screen. Let's move on to auto-undervolting. Now, you can undervolt this card using the driver, so you just have to go through performance and then go to tuning, click this one, and it will automatically undervolt the card. Now, it doesn't work right away, especially if you're using stock settings. This one seems to fail, and we do have to restart before it actually works. Now, in game, our temperatures have slightly increased despite us doing an undervolt. Now, we're now running between 74 to 78 degrees, which is on the later part of the game and open areas. The clock speeds is at around 1860 to 1870 megahertz. GPU power tends to bump between 140 to 150. Now, unlike the stock settings, this is usually about 5 watts lower at around 145 watts. fan speeds is usually at 1560 plus, but does ramp up all the way to 1700 plus and even reaching 1900 RPM during graphically intensive scenarios. When you look at hardware info during our session here, our GPU temperature maximum is at 79 degrees, junction temperature maximum is at 94 degrees, GPU clock is at 1892 MHz, which has increased versus stock settings, and GPU power is relatively very close to 150 watts, so that's fine. And lastly, our fan speeds do reach up to 2600 RPM, which hasn't happened in game, but I think this is during one of the loading screens. Okay, let's move on to auto overclocking. Similar to auto undervolting, you can automatically overclock using a button here in the drivers. When you've got the card on auto overclock, the experience is actually better on some instances. Now our temperature is between 71 to 73 degrees Celsius, which is pretty good compared to stocks in automatic undervolting. Clock speeds is at around 1860 to 1870 as well. GPU power in game is usually between 165 watts to 170 watts, so it has increased compared to our stock configuration. Obviously, we also have fan speeds, which is usually now at 2100 RPM, and it does ramp up a whole lot. Look at this one, it even goes all the way up to 3000 RPM when we're about to drop in a Mazra. Wow. So overall, in our hardware info monitoring, we've got GPU temperature maximum is at 75 degrees Celsius, which is probably due to our higher fan speeds. Now junction temperature has dropped down as well compared to our previous settings. Maximum GPU clock is now at 1966 MHz. Now that's 3% over AMD stock specifications. GPU power is very close to 175 watts, and maximum fan speed, as I've said, reach all the way up to 3275 RPM, and this fan speed is set on auto, so it does ramp up really high and will make that really loud noise. On the plus side is that you have slightly lower temperatures compared to our previous settings, but as I said, the downside is the noise. Here's a recap of all three modes: stock, automatic undervolt, and automatic overclock, and you can see the difference amongst all three in here. I mean, I'd probably lean towards the automatic overclocking because I just want pure performance, but that's totally up to you. If you're a bit sensitive on the noise, then you may need to look somewhere else. Now, we've also tried manually undervolting this card, which we've set to slightly lower millivolts, and it did bring down the maximum temperatures even lower. You can see the difference between that and the auto undervolting, which is really interesting. I feel that temperatures are a bit high for this card, and our current ambient temperature when we did this test is at 20 degrees Celsius, so if you're on a warmer climate, expect those temperatures to ramp up some more. However, for a $115 graphics card, is it worth it? I mean, the overall performance is okay. However, as mentioned, the major downside is that it probably doesn't have the best thermal management, which is what you'd expect from base model cards or even cheaper cards. Last time, we also tested an AliExpress card, which is the Elsa RX 5700 Non-XT, and that card actually performed quite well compared to this one. So if you're curious about that, click this video right here. I will see you guys over there.